Welcome back to the channel. So, there's a few serious things to talk about. We're going to do that, and then there is an actual update to the story so that everybody can be up to speed. So, number one, basically what happened is, through a failure of our own internal processes, and quite frankly, me just not thinking about it, on Saturday when I published a video, we ended up publishing a video that was recorded way earlier, that was out of date, but it was out of date to the point where, as, spreading out to people, you would watch the video and you would get the wrong impression, which is absolutely not okay. And the primary two victims in a situation like that are, of course, the developer, who deserve to not be. Again, it's like, whether it's, ill-intentioned or an accident, somebody being misrepresented is somebody being misrepresented. So that's number one. And number two, of course, is you, the viewers. Whenever you click in a video, you should have a, pretty high confidence that there's going to be no bollocks involved. So let's talk about that. Overall then, the failure. The first thing I'll say is we have published our own editorial guidelines. This is a document from last year when we were trying to tighten up a lot of our own processes so that we could do things better. So we published that. You can take a look at it. It's over in the community tab. Now, let's talk about the story itself. So, it's a story on the video game Dark and Darker. We've done quite a few videos on Dark and Darker, basically because it's a pretty fascinating subject. We'll get into it later. The developers got quite a unique story. They were on Steam, they were off Steam, they had a successful off-platform launch, and essentially this video is covering them coming back onto Steam. So the video we recorded was written and recorded at the start of last week. Thing is, though, there were a lot of other stories going around, and basically we thought, given stuff with Starfield, stuff with Dragon Age, that those would probably be stories our audience would be more interested in, so we ended up basically delaying the publication of the video. It did actually go out to our members earlier, and it ended up that that video was being published on Saturday. The problem is that by Saturday, the developer had made essentially two fairly major updates, and we'll go into those today. And that means that the out-of-date video was not accurately representing the situation as of the time of that going up. Now, the way that video went out is I published it on the train back to a family home on Saturday. I pretty much unplugged from the internet until Sunday night. That's when one of our guys noticed people making us aware of the problem. Thank you for that, by the way. Those comments are extremely appreciated, and it's because of that we actually did notice. And as soon as I was aware, of course, I did pull the video down. It was initially privated. I've set it now to unlisted, and it'll be linked in the description of this video. My thinking there is it had to immediately be privated because you do not want a misrepresentation to be spread out by the algorithm, but absolutely not something we're trying to hide from. So if you want to check out the video yourself, then yeah, you can do that. The link is down below. So it's absolutely a failure on our part. When I say our, I would say that is us as a team and policy. And then when I say common sense, that is very much my own common sense, because ultimately I am the person who hit the publish button. Really, there should have been some sort of red flag saying, hey, you recorded this video ages ago, are you absolutely sure? To be completely honest with you, I just didn't think I was going through a list of tasks. That's stupid, and that obviously meant a not good situation happened. The other side of that is policy-wise, and basically content reviews post a video's publication being delayed are now a built-in point of process for us. Basically, my thought there is that if you do something because you remember, that's fine in most cases, but human error is going to slip in. You're not going to have 100% hit rate, and that means that you've got to have systems that are pretty damn watertight. For me, an inspiration here, one of the YouTube channels I watch a lot of is Mentor Pilot, and it's seeing how in the aviation world they drill on checklists so that things aren't really left to chance. So this is now a pre-publication checklist item for videos. That is the way that it is whenever there is a delay from the sort of recording and initial intended publication date of a video. So if that gets bumped, there will then automatically be an editorial process to ensure that nothing has changed for the story. Now, of course, this is the sort of thing that does happen loads, and there's plenty of videos that come out with an addendum or that we scrap because they're no longer in date. What happened in this case is the team were working on other things, and I just did not have the common sense when it came to hitting the bloody button, which is shit. So the TLDR basically is nobody really thought about this, me especially, and the way to get around this problem is via systems and policy so that it can reliably not happen again in the future, and that is why this is essentially a checklist item as a part of the video publication process, because this stuff cannot be left to chance. Now, on the topic of Dark and Darker and Iron Mace. Honestly, it's a really fascinating story. I'm going to get you up to speed, and then we'll talk about the new things. The good thing is that the new things are good, positive updates that the games community have received positively, which is absolutely great news. So my TLDR was that it wasn't like an ideal situation, right? It was obviously like a bit of a misfire, but I really felt it was a pretty honest oversight from the developers rather than anything that was like particularly malicious. After that in the video, I quickly recapped their pretty hardcore legal history. It is quite something. It really is. It is actually a real interesting story, and it's one that we've covered a few times on the channel as it has developed. And then I tried to end the video on what I thought was a high note, basically saying, hey, extraction-style gameplay is moving out of shooters and into other genres. That's because of Legacy, Steel, and Sorcery. Now, whenever I mention Legacy, Steel, and Sorcery, which is just one of the ones in my head because it is extraction, it's in a fantasy setting, I did disclose that I know that dev because, I mean, for ethical reasons. I mean, there's no financial, relationship or anything like that. It's more, we just chatted in Discord a few times, but still, that does bias me towards that game, or at least towards mentioning the game, which, I obviously did. So from my point of view, I disclosed that so that you would understand why I happen to have that game on my radar. My overall take, though, is I think the extraction gameplay format is actually really damn good, really compelling. I'm actually not as interested in it in shooters myself, but of course, playing WoW and, a lot of associated games, that in a fantasy setting is really good. I think that could be actual crack. I totally, though, understand how a lot of people saw that. I mean, me looking extremely out of touch. Because, of course, when that video was recorded, it was way in the past. When it was published, a lot of facts had changed. And that means that, a good faith interpretation of watching that video is, why the hell is this guy not saying any of these new things that we know happened? Why on earth would he do that? And, of course, when you raise that question, a lot of not particularly good answers will immediately appear in your head, and that is a totally fair thing. Of course, what it was a failure of process and common sense, and I suppose the less you have common sense, the more you need process, so definitely going harder on the process. As I said, you can check out our editorial guidelines, which are posted on the community tab. So that's that situation. My number one apology is to Iron Mace. And my number two apology is to you guys, the community, and of course the number three apology is to the team, because ultimately I was publishing this, and at the end of the day, the buck stops with me, and that does mean it is my responsibility. With that being said, there are those updates to the story, and I absolutely have got to talk about them, especially because it's actually really good news in that they have been positive. So, there are two post-launch updates. Let me go through the info, and then we'll review what some of the numbers have been like on Steam. So, 3 days after launch, on the Monday test after the weekend, testing began on a new version of the free-to-play normal mode. This would remove item restrictions and allow gear up to legendary grade. Then the implementation was that matchmaking would be based on gear in 2 user pools. So user pool 1 is functionally the same as before, with gear limited to a score of 25, and then user pool 2 is everything past that score limit in a new version of normal that would be allowing all gear up to legendary, with the intent that this mode captures the classic chaos and destruction. Now, this is still in testing. It's something that Iron Mace are in flux with, and of course they're leaving themselves a little bit of space to alter it in the future if they find that it doesn't work, which of course is completely reasonable. They're testing in new game mode. They say themselves, keep in mind that the gear cap can and will be adjusted in real time to rarity that best suits normal dungeons. Now, this is mostly being done by server-side fixes and lifting limitations, so it actually works really well as an urgent solution, right? It does mean that there's not a massive need to just go in and rework the game's whole feature set. So, the next update, and I think this is what particularly, this is such a clear L on our side, because frankly it wasn't on our radar, which is stupid. It should have been. It's irresponsible for it to have not been on our radar. The second update happened on Friday, and it is the platform link. Basically, that had launched. And what it is an account transfer sort of system that lets people transfer any progress from their existing non-Steam network to their Steam profile, crucially with no need to repurchase. And actually, the idea that somebody who had bought the game on the prior platform, that they would then feel like they had to go and buy the game in Steam, that is one of the reasons why the developer originally chose to do that free-to-play launch. launch. Basically, they were doing the free-to-play launch while they were working on the progress like crossover system. Now, there are some caveats with the system currently. This is presumably just because it was implemented pretty rapidly post-launch. I mean, it is a plan that they had, but I suppose given the unanticipated number of very initial negative views, they probably hastened their plans, and that was almost certainly the right move. But here's the restriction. So you cannot connect to a Steam platform account if you already had characters on your Steam account, and you need to have no purchases associated with the new Steam platform account. And with that, Iron Mace basically just said, in this case, they recommend creating a brand new clean account on the new platform to link your previous account. Now, there are some other criticisms that have been raised by players that were also considered there. So there's people concerned with the potential for pay to win, as paid players could simply buy good gear rather than looting it, and then enter the newly available upper tier of the normal mode, while free-to-play people just could not trade at all. So, free-to-play accounts will be getting the ability to buy items from the marketplace only, while legendary players will be able to use the marketplace and the trading post freely. So that basically gives free-to-play players the ability to like compete on the same playing field, though of course with with no trading restrictions. If you're a paid player, you will obviously have an easier time overall. And of course, big picture for a game like this, I mean, I do see free-to-play as see if you enjoy the game experience, but if you do, I mean, that's obviously when it makes sense to go and buy the game, so the dev gets money for the game that they've made. Now, as a way of making sure that paid people don't feel like their value has been diminished, they have also got a full-sized stash upgrade from the shared stash. And they're going to do more stuff to make sure that the legendary players feel valued. So, in both cases here, the devs have listened. These are updates that are driven by player feedback, and they have iterated on this stuff pretty damn rapidly. The free-to-play normal mode change can basically be seen as a sign of the devs listening and just trying to go as fast as they can. And as Iron Mace themselves admitted, they simply didn't see the initial shitstorm coming, right? Because they just had their own view on how people would appreciate the original mode. Of course, what's a mark of a great dev is whenever that view was challenged by the player base, well, they rethought their assumptions and they got to work on remedies seemingly immediately. So let's talk about the results of that. Following the first patch, Steam reviews were still mixed. You could basically see about a 53% split. That was on the 11th, right? So this is as of the time of one of our screenshots. By the 17th, though, things had largely changed. I think it's one of those situations where when you see somebody listen, be honest, change their mind, and do the work, people will broadly think no harm, no foul. And it's positive to see that in action because the reviews, at least as of this screenshot, are back up to 70%. I imagine by the time a few hours have passed and this actually hits the internet, they'll probably be a bit higher. And certainly in terms of the numbers, I mean, you're talking about just shy of 20,000 user reviews. That's a hell of a lot. So I mean, it does look like this has been quite the success. Now, that being said, not every single one of those reviews will be from a paying customer, so we'll have to see what the revenue's actually like for the dev. I suppose for their sake, hopefully pretty good, given obviously given the legal stuff that kind of could be hanging over them. Another thing that's real positive is when we actually take a look at the player counts, you can see that they've basically surged upwards. I mean, you're looking at just shy of 55,000. Who knows how high that will go? That's incredible. And I think it does show extraction style gameplay. That risk reward, that bit of spiciness, people absolutely love it. And it's why I'm actually pretty bullish of this genre outside of shooters. Of course, there's plenty of potential within shooters, and I know there's lots of games. I mean, Tarkov, obviously. I know the Tarkov modding scene has certainly got a little shot of life, given everything that has happened with Tarkov. But still, I think this is really cool. We're seeing extraction gameplay outside of the shooter do fairly well. That's just exciting to me. It being applied to, to fantasy, which is the genre that I kind of like the most. That's just exciting. That's cool. And this certainly does look like a really good success for Iron Mace. One where essentially it's what we all would want to see. A dev who listens to feedback, starts to solve the problem, and ultimately succeeds on the underlying strength of their own work. So, hats off to them. Hopefully this gets them perhaps some more resources, and hopefully those resources help this game grow. Certainly, if you have player numbers like that, I mean, you can go the distance, right? Like, that's enough to make it right up Steam charts. So, good luck to them, and I suppose we'll all be waiting and interested in what updates they do have. That is it for today's video. Again, of course, I apologize to you guys and to Iron Mace. You should expect better from us. than a situation like that, where ultimately it was a lack of common sense. It was pretty careless and stupid. I will say, look, there's no bad intent. It is a pretty simple, honest L. That's not the sort of thing that I want to make the habit of doing, because ultimately that would just be the most self-defeating and stupid thing I could possibly do. And it also runs completely against the entire point of this channel existing. Thank you for holding us to account. Please continue to do so. I absolutely, I value the feedback. Feedback makes us better. So thanks to everybody who left it. And with that said, it's the start of a new week. There will be plenty of stories to cover. I've got a few more to record after this one. And whenever they go out, the proper review process bloody well will happen. Okay, take care. I'll see you next time.